Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your home for the biggest stories shaping the US and the world. I'm Cary, Johnston, live from the Firstpost studios. Our top story on the show today. Is Iran signaling readiness for confrontation as tensions with the United States continue to rise? Also on the program, after immigration agents shot a nurse in Minneapolis, is Trump's promise to de-escalate anything more than just words? A surprise message from Moscow raises big questions about the future of ongoing negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. And Canada's international student boom has hit a dead end. What's behind the sudden collapse and what does it mean for aspiring students? We begin with escalating tensions in West Asia. The United States and Iran have exchanged sharp warnings over Tehran's nuclear program as the US military presence in the region continues to grow. In the latest development, Turkey is stepping into the US-Iran standoff, offering to mediate between Washington and Tehran. Turkey's foreign minister is set to reiterate Turkey's opposition to military interventions against Iran. Reports say Ankara is also weighing contingency plans along its long and fragile 530-kilometer border with the country. Among the options being considered are stepping up the deployment of advanced border security technology and increasing troop presence along the frontier. Meanwhile, President Trump has issued a warning saying that time is running out for Tehran to negotiate a new nuclear deal.
A massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm and purpose. It is a larger fleet, headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, than that sent to Venezuela. Like with Venezuela, it is ready, willing and able to rapidly fulfill its mission, with speed and violence, if necessary. Hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties.
Well, Tehran, however, maintains that its nuclear program is entirely peaceful and has consistently denied seeking nuclear weapons. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Wednesday told lawmakers that the Iranian regime is weaker than ever, pointing to economic collapse and widespread public anger. He said the US military buildup is meant to defend against potential Iranian action.
But that's, I think, what you're seeing now is the ability to posture assets in the region to defend against what could be an Iranian threat against our personnel. They certainly have the capability to do it because they've amassed thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles that they've built. Despite the fact that their economy is collapsing, they keep spending money on that.
Rubio also said that the president retains the option of preemptive action if there are clear signs of an imminent threat from Iran.
In essence, if we have indications that, in fact, they're going to attack our troops in the region, to defend our personnel in the region. We also have security agreements, the Defense of Israel Plan and others, that require us to have a force posture in the region to defend against that.
Meanwhile, Iran says its armed forces are on high alert and ready to respond immediately and forcefully to any attack by land or sea. Tehran's UN mission also said that Iran is ready for talks with the United States, but warned it will defend itself if provoked.
Our position is clear. Negotiations cannot take place under threats, and any talks must be conducted in conditions where threats and excessive demands are set aside.
Well, now the European Union has imposed new Iran sanctions targeting individuals involved in a violent crackdown on protesters. EU foreign ministers are also meeting in Brussels, where they're expected to approve a new round of sanctions targeting Tehran.
Le courage inouï des Iraniennes.
France announced yesterday that it will support the inclusion of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, on the European Union's list of terrorist organizations, because there can be no impunity for the crimes committed.
Procureur, chef d'unité de police, membre du corps des gardiens de la Révolution.
Iran has cautioned that there would be destructive consequences if the European Union designates the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Iran's reaction comes after Italy's foreign minister called on Brussels to move forward with the proposal, after Argentina already designated the IRGC as a terrorist group. The group itself has warned that any neighboring country allowing its territory to be used for attacks on Iran will be treated as hostile. The warning followed the arrival of a US aircraft carrier group in the region. Satellite images show at least 15 US fighter jets have arrived at Jordan's Muwafaq Air Force Base. Additional aircraft have also been deployed to bases in Qatar and Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The American aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, has also arrived in the region. Iran has responded by deploying a drone carrier near its coast. The country's army chief also confirmed that a new batch of 1,000 drones have been added to its defense arsenal.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is confident in its own capabilities and also bears in mind past experiences, including the heroic confrontation of June. More capable than ever, it will respond to any act of aggression with a comprehensive and regret-inducing response.
Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the Iranian leadership is running out of time as US President Donald Trump steps up warnings of possible intervention, and the ripple effect is being felt beyond the region. While speaking with his Chinese counterpart, the Russian defense minister said that events in Venezuela and Iran show the need for coordinated actions by both Chinese and Russian defense forces. Well, tensions between Washington and Tehran escalated after weeks of anti-regime protests in Iran, which killed at least 3,000 people in a brutal crackdown. And now, with military assets moving and diplomacy stalled, the risk of miscalculation in West Asia is continuing to grow. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Ruzbe Parsi, who's a senior adjunct lecturer at Lund University, joining us live from Sweden. Welcome to the program. Let me ask you first, if I may, how seriously should the region be taking this US military deployment along with Donald Trump's threats?
I think it should be taken seriously for the simple reason that it's very difficult to predict what Donald Trump will do in the end. And when he amasses these kind of troops and the rhetoric, I think it would be naive to not think that something could happen. And we can also see that there is both a domestic pressure to not engage too much, but also pressure to react. In this case, primarily because of the way the Iranian state has been using violence against its own population.
Iran says it has a right to defend itself, but what form would that take? Would it be looking at disrupting important shipping routes, for example?
Well, I think for the Iranians, it's clear that their previous attempts of being, if you will, calming things down and not escalating as a way of showing the Americans that they can be responsible actors has not paid off. So basically, they're now in a mode where they want to show that they're willing to go all in if they are attacked, and they will use all their military assets to show the Americans that they are not to be played with. Now, that would, of course, entail attacks on American assets and bases in the region, as well as potentially using mines or otherwise make it very difficult to use the shipping lanes of the Persian Gulf.
And how would Russia and China then react to any American attack on Iran?
Well, I don't think they're going to expend too much energy or political capital to defend Iran in any way, but they also don't like the principle that Donald Trump is now basically setting, which is that the United States is unbound. It will use whatever military and economic assets it has for its own ends, never mind if there are any international rules or agreements that it used to respect in some shape or form. And if Iran were to fall in whatever form in terms of American attacks, that of course would change the calculus and the whole geopolitical map of the region, which would affect both Russia and especially China very much.
So if America does strike, what kind of targets would its military be looking at?
Well, this is the big question, because if you listen to Donald Trump, it seems like he wants to change or make the regime go away. And for that, you're going to need much more than a few strikes. It's not going to be like Venezuela, and it's not going to be like the 12-day war in June last year when they destroyed some Iranian nuclear facilities. The Iranian political and military system is very dispersed. It has a lot of redundancy, which means that if you kill one person, there is someone else who can fill that post. So if he's serious about regime change, the endeavor and the effort would be something very different from what I think he domestically can actually sell, because I don't think the MAGA movement, which is his main base, is interested in yet another longish war in the Middle East.
Ruzbeh Parsi, we very much appreciate your insights. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The fatal shooting of an intensive care nurse in Minnesota has sparked a political storm around President Trump's immigration crackdown. And it's only getting bigger. 2 federal immigration officers involved in the killing of 37-year-old Alex Pretty have been placed on administrative leave. The US government has called it standard protocol. Meanwhile, new footage has emerged showing Pretty being attacked at a previous protest. Now, under an internal guidance issued by the Trump administration, ICE officers in Minnesota are being asked to avoid communicating or engaging with what they describe as agitators. But for many people, making their voices heard is more urgent than ever.
I've been kind of vacillating between feeling like kind of depressed and heartbroken and enraged, and this just felt like a good way to be together with my fellow medical professionals.
Well, Pretty was shot multiple times last Saturday after a struggle with masked, camouflaged officers on a street in Minneapolis. But now a new video that was filmed 11 days before his death shows Pretty being forced to the ground in a separate incident. Well, first, senior White House officials tried to justify what happened on that occasion.
During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots.
But the video evidence contradicted that claim. Meanwhile, last weekend's incident showed Pretty holding his phone and filming agents before he was sprayed with a chemical irritant and pinned down.
Unroll your windows. No, you're spraying inside. Let's go around.
The Department of Homeland Security report later confirmed that 2 officers fired their weapons. One agent was heard shouting, "He's got a gun," but the report does not clearly say whether Pretty posed a real threat when he was shot. Investigators say his firearm was recovered only after the killing. Now, President Trump initially said he wanted to de-escalate a little bit in Minneapolis, but within 24 hours, he changed tone. He attacked the city's mayor, Jacob Frey, accusing him of playing with fire for refusing to use local police to support federal immigration raids.
We're going to de-escalate a little bit. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him. Bottom line, it was terrible.
Well, Frey, on the other hand, pushed back. He wrote on X that the job of our police is to keep people safe, not enforce federal immigration laws. I want them preventing homicides, not hunting down a working dad. Well, Pretty's death was not an isolated case. Earlier this month, another Minneapolis protester, Renee Nicole Good, was also killed by federal agents. Both victims were U.S. citizens. Across the country, clashes between protesters and masked federal officers are becoming more common. Community activists say Trump's promise to ease tensions has not matched the reality. And now the fallout has gone global. In Paris, protesters gathered in the cold, chanting slogans against U.S. immigration agencies. Some Americans living in France said they felt safer protesting there than back home.
Trump is a tyrant. He's a guy who bought his way into the election. And I think at this point we need to look and see that he's coming for all of us. He's coming for our neighbors.
Anti-ICE protests were also held in London. Hundreds gathered in Trafalgar Square demanding justice for both Alex Pretty and Renee Nicole Good. Well, meanwhile, in Washington, a growing number of voices have raised concerns about the Homeland Security Secretary's leadership. Republican and Democratic Party leaders have called for Kristi Noem to step down from her position.
She clearly doesn't know how to manage. She's never managed a large organization, and she's failing at every possible measure of the job.
So what began as a street encounter in Minneapolis has turned into something much bigger. A battle over fear, over power, over who is protected by the state. Some are asking, if this is de-escalation, then what does escalation look like? Well, still to come on the program, the rush for real estate, why Indians are snapping up luxury properties in Dubai. Russia has once again floated the idea of direct talks between President Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. This time the message is clear. If Zelensky wants to meet, he should come to Moscow. Well, the offer comes from Yuri Ashakov, a senior aide to the Russian president. According to him, if Zelensky is serious about talks, Moscow is ready to receive him. He even promised full security for the Ukrainian president during such a visit, saying that such a meeting had been discussed before.
This topic of Putin-Zelensky meet is not new for us, and it was discussed for several times during telephone calls between our President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. During these calls, Trump proposed us to consider such an opportunity. We have never ruled out such contacts. The main thing is that these contacts will be well prepared. It is the first thing. The second one is that it will need to be results-oriented.
Well, the invitation comes as US-brokered peace talks prepare for another round. Zelensky has said his negotiating team could meet Russian and American officials as early as this weekend, without specifying the location. Ukraine's foreign minister says that Zelensky is willing to meet Putin in person, but only after sufficient progress is made by all negotiators towards ending the war. At the heart of the deadlock are three major issues. Firstly, territory. Russia wants full control of eastern Ukraine's Donbas region, along with Crimea, which it had already annexed. Ukraine says giving up territory would be illegal and unacceptable. Secondly, security guarantees. Ukraine wants clear promises of protection to prevent Russia from attacking again. Moscow, meanwhile, is demanding limits on Ukraine's military and wants NATO kept out permanently. Thirdly, the timescale for fighting to stop. Ukraine wants an immediate ceasefire. Russia says a peace deal must come before a ceasefire. Well, Russian officials say demands for a ceasefire without a broader peace pact raise doubts about Kyiv's intentions. They argue that stopping the fighting first could shift the balance on the ground, rather than move talks closer to a lasting settlement.
Those who say, for example, Europeans, Germany, Britain, of course, they keep on saying, now the first priority is a ceasefire for 60 days or a permanent ceasefire. This push for a ceasefire isn't serious, even though we are ready to talk to those representatives. But when they say that everything beyond temporary ceasefire is secondary, we understand what they are talking about. They want to buy some more time for the Kyiv regime once again to keep its position.
Meanwhile, President Trump has said that both Zelensky and Putin are willing to end the war.
You know, what's happened here is there were times when Putin didn't want to make a deal, times when Zelensky didn't want to make a deal, and it was like opposite times. Now I think they both want to make a deal, but we'll find out.
Well, despite talk of progress, the fighting continues. Russian strikes are still hitting Ukraine daily, damaging power supplies and killing civilians. Ukraine said Russia launched a fresh wave of drone attacks in and around Kyiv early on Wednesday. Well, the strikes killed 2 people near the capital. The attack came just a day after separate strikes hit a passenger train, killing 5 people. So an invitation is on the table for President Zelensky to visit Moscow. But with fighting continuing and key differences still unresolved, it remains unclear whether Zelensky will accept an offer he has previously dismissed. For now, the question is whether diplomacy can bridge the divide, or whether the Moscow invite is simply another pressure point in a war with no easy exit. The boarding gate that once carried thousands of international students to Canada is suddenly quiet. Fewer suitcases, fewer goodbyes, and far fewer visas. Canada has seen a staggering 97% drop in new international student arrivals. The figures have sent shockwaves across campuses, colleges, and student communities. So, what has happened to one of the world's most popular study destinations? Well, just 2 years ago, Canada was booming with international students. From Toronto to Vancouver, classrooms were full, rental homes were scarce, and colleges expanded rapidly to meet demand. International students weren't just learners, they were an economic engine. They paid higher fees, filled part-time jobs, and kept entire education ecosystems running. But then came the reset. According to official Canadian immigration data, new international student arrivals plunged from over 95,000 during a peak month in December 2023 to around 2,400 in November 2025. It doesn't mean that students already in Canada have vanished. It means that new arrivals have stopped coming, and this wasn't accidental. In early 2024, the Canadian government began tightening the screws over migration.
Today, we're announcing that we will reduce the number of immigrants we bring in over the next 3 years, which will result in a pause in the population growth over the next 2 years. Immigration is essential for Canada's future, but it must be controlled and it must be sustainable. With today's annual immigration plan, that is precisely what we're doing.
Well, Canada introduced yearly caps on international study permits. This was an historic shift for a country that had long marketed itself as open and welcoming. Next came stricter checks on college admission letters. Authorities cracking down after uncovering large-scale fraud where students arrived with offers from bogus colleges. Then the financial bar was raised. Students were suddenly required to show much higher proof of funds, reflecting the reality of Canada's soaring living costs. And finally, Ottawa went even further. Studying in the country would no longer be an easy pathway to permanent residency. The government says the system was under pressure. Housing shortages, healthcare strain, overcrowded campuses. The solution, it argues, was to slow down the influx, but the impact has been painful. Several colleges that relied heavily on foreign tuition fees are now cutting courses. Some are laying off staff, and student housing projects are being paused. And for students watching from abroad, especially from India, the dream now feels uncertain because historically Indians made up the largest share of international students. Canada once meant study, work, and the potential to settle. But now it means longer processing times, tougher approvals, and fewer guarantees after graduation. Immigration officials insist the numbers are being misunderstood. They say the 97% figure compares peak months with non-peak months, not annual totals. But even with that clarification, the direction is unmistakable. Canada is intentionally shrinking its international student pipeline. So this is not a temporary slowdown, it's a deliberate shift that's forcing students to rethink their futures and forcing colleges to rethink their finances. For years, international students helped power Canada's growth. But now the rules are tougher, and the queues at the boarding gates seem to be a thing of the past. And now our final story today. Dubai has always been a favourite playground for Indian tourism. Many have now been taking it a step further. They're buying property. From seasoned investors to young professionals, Indians are fast becoming one of the biggest real estate purchasers in the UAE. Our report now explains why Dubai has become India's hottest overseas address.
If Dubai's property market had a VIP guest list in 2025, Indians and Britons would be right at the top. Latest industry data shows buyers from India and the UK purchased more properties in Dubai than any other nationality in 2025. The biggest trigger? The Indian rupee weakened by over 7% against the dollar-pegged UAE dirham in 2025. It slipped close to 25 rupees per AED compared to 23.3 rupees in 2024. For many Indians, that decline turned Dubai property into a handy currency hedge and a long-term income option. Basically, a falling rupee and better returns pushed investors to look beyond home turf and straight towards the UAE. According to Knight Frank, an international property consultant, Indians made up 10% of Dubai's property sales in 2025, up from 6% in 2024. Another report by Better Homes, a real estate agency, shows Indians accounted for 14% of total transactions last year, helped by relatively low interest rates. And the math is hard to ignore. Experts say in India, rental yields in prime locations like Gurugram sit at just 2 to 3%. In contrast, Dubai offers 8 to 10% rental yields. Put simply, a 3 crore rupees property in Gurugram may earn 6 to 9 lakh rupees a year, while the same investment in Dubai can fetch 24 to 30 lakh rupees annually. But it's not just older wealthy investors making the move. Young, affluent Indians, especially Gen Z, are fast becoming Dubai's newest power buyers. Many are in their mid-20s to early 30s, earning global salaries in tech, finance, and consulting. For them, Dubai real estate isn't a luxury purchase. It's a strategic financial milestone. Long-term visas and investor-friendly rules have removed much of the uncertainty that once held young buyers back. Add to that zero property tax, no capital gains tax, and simpler regulations, a sharp contrast to India's layered taxes and stamp duties. For a generation already exposed to volatile assets like equities and crypto, Dubai real estate offers something rare: stability with global mobility. Developers are also taking note. Compact luxury homes, flexible payment plans, digital purchases, virtual tours, and AI-driven recommendations are now being designed specifically for Indian Gen Z investors. From falling rupees to rising rents, one thing is clear. In 2025, when it comes to overseas property, India and Britain are betting big on Dubai.
That's it on the show today. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this